Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Pixelated Sausage Show. I should enunciate better in the opening where I'm mentioning the title of the show, which is the Pixelated Sausage Show. Hi. How is everyone doing? Hopefully well. I am, of course, your host, Mark Kuznez, and it's a bit of a light week. To get some site YouTube related stuff out of the way, I have been going back and forth on how to title episodes in different shows, and I think the new consensus specifically with Attack the Backlog is blah 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 game review. If it's a dual parter, that is. Not bracket, I forget what they're called, but the straight line divider. I feel like we call them pipes or something, but I never really talk about what they're called, so the term escapes me. But that, then part whatever, part 1, part 2, part so on, and then some flavor text. For example, the most recent Attack the Backlog episode is for The Last of Us Part 2, which is a dual parter, and the current title under this new structure is The Last of Us Part 2 Review, Pipe Part 1. Pipe. Is it better than Part 1? Question mark. And I do like that structure. It feels a little wrong not including the title of the particular show in the title of the episode, but I think the thumbnail itself does that, as well as the playlist, or if you're listening via audio places, Spotify or Apple Podcasts, etc., then you will get the title of the show there. I've got a pen in my hand. I'm fiddling with it, so I've already smacked some things multiple times, and hopefully they haven't come through the mic, but they probably have. But I'm thinking that gets the job done. I'm hoping that it does. Because at the same time, too, no one's particularly looking for the show title, the show Attack the Backlog. But if they come across it by looking for The Last of Us or Lego Batman or so on and so forth, Kingdom Come Deliverance, which will be an eventual one, Grounded, that's how they'll find it. And then they'll find the playlist and the YouTube page or whatnot. And it doesn't matter. I was saying when you look for it on Spotify or something, you're going to get the show landing page. But in addition to that, in order to spice up the thumbnails a little bit to give them some unique flavor and not go the route of probably better success, it's just something I'm incapable of doing. I feel too icky to put my face on it doing some weird expression, oh my god, doing shit like that, or plastering text all over it, cluttering the hell out of it. I like it just being clean with whether it be some key art or gameplay, a screenshot or so on. But since each show has its own album art for podcast purposes, even though since everything Last Call and Second Runs are under the umbrella of Attack the Backlog, those I think would just have the same one, even though they have unique art tagged to them in the file, that is. I would assume it's all that, but on YouTube at least, the playlists are all individual and they have their individual art associated with them. I've taken the art from the background of those various shows and I have put it in each thumbnail going forward, and I'm going to eventually, at some point, it's going to be a tedious process, I'm going to go back and redo every thumbnail because I like the way it looks. I've received nothing but positive feedback, which is good. But I've basically just taken some of my own art, So it's very me, and it's made by me, and it will give my thumbnails a unique look that no other thumbnails will have. It's going to be, you're going to see it a lot because I'm not going to change it up. I could adjust the hue to not contrast, but to, what is the term I'm looking for, to complement whatever art I'm using for the actual thumbnail. So if I'm doing, for instance, a thumbnail with Mario, and then I change the hue to be of the art for that, whether it's on Pixelated, Sausage Joe, Attack the Backlog, whatnot, I adjust the hue so that the colors are relatively in that red, blue, yellow range, as opposed to green, purple, and orange or something like that. If it was green, purple, and orange, then I would be doing a Spider-Man Green Goblin episode of whatever. But I decided to do that. I'm happy with the outcome, and I hope it is something that at least draws some people's attention. And at the very least, I would like it if people look at it and they don't think, I don't know who the hell this Pixelated Sausage person is. I'm not going to click through this, but you know what? This thumbnail, this little art thing I'm seeing here, I like this. This is nice art. And it also is something that, well, just in general, I would like to actually in the future have casual streams. I've set up the whole layout for it for streaming them. That would give you my cam, and then this little canvas type thing that's a poster. It's like a wall, a photo frame, a wall frame. That's not the word I'm looking for. Photo wall. It's just multiple frames, and the large frame that takes up the majority of the screen is where the blank canvas would be for the capture, for the screen capture of my iPad for doing digital art. And then I could draw and stream and chat and have nice little casual streams in that sense. But I'm thinking, because I did a few test ones years ago, and I did just do ones where I was drawing. But I think for the purpose of streaming, it would probably be more enjoyable. And I would love feedback on this, but I feel like it'd be more enjoyable and it wouldn't require as much of my attention to do finished pieces, well, finished line drawings and illustrations and stream the coloring. So that's an idea. But I just wanted to give my thumbnails a little unique flair that is very me. And I was just testing some things out, liked it immediately, looked for some feedback, got positive feedback, and that's where we're at with that. But yeah, that's all I really want to talk about and whatnot. I'm still streaming Kingdom Come Deliverance. Boy, do I have opinions on that. Look forward to those episodes whenever they come out. But it'll probably be a while-ish. Because we have The Last of Us Part 2, Episode 2, or Part 2 coming out next week. And then after that, I haven't decided what I'll throw out there. Because I've got a decent amount in the reserves. We've got Grounded Part 1 and Part 2. Bro Force. What else? I think there's multiple Mercenary Kings. That's the old one. That'll probably be the one after Last of Us, to just get that out of there. And then I have a handful of Last Calls that'll be trickling out. The next one after this week, we put up Dauntless this week, and that ends. That game dies, service closed at the end of the month, and the same is this, true of Multiverses. So I'll probably put that one up next week as well. Yeah. All that's going on. This is a pretty light week, and I haven't had as much time. It's been a recurring broken record type of thing for like a month at this point. But I thought, what could I do to give this episode a bit more meat on the bones? Boats on the bone. And I thought about a topic that we were discussing during one of my streams, which is and this is kind of related to the Switch 2 coming out very soon. It's kind of hard to believe that the Switch 2 is a mere, well, now it's 1 day less than 3 weeks away, so 2 weeks and 6 days, I believe, because I think a week from today, Friday, is the start of Summer Game Fest, which is the 6th, and the 5th is the release of the Switch, so that would put it at 2 weeks and 6 days away, which is wild to think about. Wild. But of course, it is a hybrid handheld, dockable console. And I don't know if it's because of that or what. I know that part of it, for me at least, was thinking about the Switch 1, which I got rid of my original Switch. I kept the Joy-Con controllers. I feel like I frustrate the hell out of people with some of my finicky ways in trying to stay true to the full name and terminology of things, which is like with the Joy-Con controllers. I think most people probably just call them the Joy-Cons, but they're not the Joy-Cons. They're the Joy-Con controllers. It's not Legos, it's Lego bricks. I do stuff like that, which I think annoys a decent amount of people. Except I am someone who doesn't correct people who do the other version that I've mentioned. I don't care if you call Lego bricks Legos or Joy-Con controllers Joy-Cons. I don't care. I just like to try and be relatively accurate. So, yeah. But one of the things, to get back on point, that got me thinking about handhelds was thinking about the Switch and how I always thought the Switch Lite was the ideal Switch for me. If not for the fact that I am so ingrained in wanting to constantly be able to capture what I'm playing and playing games for content, which is something that I should break off from, and I have some plans to do some stuff of the sort. Then I also think to myself, hey, what about the Steam Deck playing it handheld, or even if I had a Lite and played it handheld, or the Pocket? Do they have the Switch? I think has an ability where you can capture the last 30 seconds or maybe more at this point. And Steam added the ability to capture, just do screen capture for as long as you want, well, however much memory you have on your Steam Deck available. I could still play things handheld and capture things. So I'm not really thinking about it. I'm an idiot. But I really wanted to try a Lite, to feel one and see how it feels. Got to do that. And I think it's pretty nice. But the real question, or the question I'm asking of you, of everyone, is what is the greatest handheld, gaming handheld ever made? For me, it all starts with a company that I adore, I'm very nostalgic for, a company that no longer is in the hardware market, and that is Sega. And my first handheld was one of the largest, if not the largest handhelds I've ever owned. Incredibly clunky, horrible battery life, but it is one of my favorite handhelds ever, and that is the Sega Nomad. If you don't know what the Sega Nomad is, you may have heard of the Game Gear, which was their dedicated handheld. But the Sega Nomad was basically a portable Sega Genesis. And that may not seem impressive these days with emulation and being able to have a portable Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, etc. in your hands all in one. But back in, what was it, the early 90s, early mid 90s, being able to have this dedicated home console in a portable version with a screen that I could just take anywhere, and the most impressive thing about it really was that I had this portable now that allowed me to play the games I already owned from this other console, so I didn't have to buy new games. And growing up, I got consoles late. I got games cheap and used and so on. Didn't get a lot of games in general, so being able to play the games I already have was a big deal. The Nomad was incredibly expensive, and it ended up being, I believe, my Christmas gift that year from everyone. So I got no other gifts. It was just the Sega Nomad. I don't think I got a game, but I got the super heavy, chunky, additional rechargeable battery, which was just... The thing about the Nomad was that it was huge. Battery life was awful. If you want to take multiple games, I mean, it's using Sega Genesis cartridges. So think about a deck of playing cards. If you want to take multiple games with you, that's going to take a lot of space too. But just the concept of it was so cool. And in a way, it kind of is what the Switch is today. Sans the fact that you need two different... It's not a hybrid console. It is the portable version. It would be like if the Switch Lite was a complementary system to the Switch at home thing. So there was no Switch Lite. It was just the dock and the non-dock. I don't know what you would call that version. But I loved my Nomad. After that, I never had an original Game Boy. I think there's something kind of pleasant about the thick, bulky nature of that original Game Boy, but my first Game Boy was the Game Boy Color, which I only got because after thinking Pokemon was too young for me, too much of a baby game for me, I was too old, too cool for it, because I was in that teenage phase. When I finally got to play a friend's copy of it, I noticed or realized within minutes that I was a fool and this was one of the greatest games of all time. It was going to be. So I ended up getting an Indigo, I think it is, that purple Game Boy Color, and a copy of Pokemon Blue. And I adored the hell out of it. Was it shitty in low light settings? Yeah, but I had one of those tacked on magnifying glass lights that you could use to play. I remember playing it with that quite often. But I loved it. Didn't have many games for it. If I'm being honest, I don't remember owning any other game for it outside of Pokemon Blue. I'm trying to think. I don't think of anything else that comes to mind. And then after that, we moved on to the Game Boy Advance and the Game Boy Advance SP. I love GBA. It is one of my favorite consoles in terms of the lineup, even though I didn't have that much either, but just for having Area of Sorrow and Metroid Fusion alone for me, in addition to the ports of classic NES games. So what was it? Super Mario Advance 3, Super Mario Bros. 2, and Legend of Zelda and so on. I love having those available to me. I think there was a really good Kirby game on there, but I can't remember. And when we got the SP, it was this incredible moment of having a backlight on a handheld. The Nomad was backlit, but I mean, that thing was just humongous. The SP was this little tiny thing. And I had the NES Edition 1, which I don't know what happened to that thing, and it bums me out that I still don't have it. And I'm pretty sure it's expensive as hell to try and get that again. But I love the Game Boy Advance. I think in terms of playability, the original Game Boy Advance is a better device to play on. But with the backlight and quality of life features, in addition to the clamshell nature of it being more protective, the SP is the better of the two, but I do have quite a lot of affinity for the original Game Boy Advance model. Then we move on to the DS. The original DS fucking sucked. It felt cheap. It was big. It looked ugly. And when you start off that console, that generation, you think to yourself, man, this whole 2-screen thing is kind of stupid. This thing looks stupid. How could this possibly turn out being the best of them all? Spoilers, the DS Lite is the greatest gaming handheld ever made. It is the perfect combination of everything that makes a good handheld. One, it's portable. It's small enough to fit in your pocket without being bulky and without you noticing or feeling like, oh my God, I got this giant thing in my pocket. It fits nicely in your pocket, unless you have really tight pocket. I guess if you are a lady, because from my knowledge, I could be wrong. Don't lady jeans and maybe pants in general have smaller, tighter pockets, either smaller and tighter or smaller or tighter? Which, that sucks. How dare they not think of you and wanting to carry your DS Lite with you? But it was a really sleek design. I had the Crimson Red, I believe was called one. That was the two-tone red and it wasn't black. It was a very dark gray. And it was beautiful. So beautiful. It felt nice. It felt premium. It felt like a tank. And this is inherent of all the DS. And it'll continue on with the 3DS. But the clamshell design is so crucial because it makes it so that unless you care about the protection of the actual handheld body, it makes it so that the screen is always protected. The most important thing is always protected, and therefore you don't need to have a case. You don't need to worry about scratching the screen or damaging it in any way because it's protected. And you could drop that thing and it was a beast. And it was beautiful. And I liked the Lite over the DSi. I never had a DSi, but the addition of the camera slot on the front shell, part of the shell, I don't like that. It takes away from the unification of the design and not my thing. I like the matte finish of them. But yeah, I think the DS Lite specifically, absolutely gorgeous console. Felt great to play. Great. I'm trying to think. Because if we just consider excluding backward compatibility or emulation or virtual console type things, I think the DS had the best lineup. Atlas was killing it on it with so many so many RPGs. I need to take a drink. So many RPGs and whatnot. Great Pokemon games. It was probably... I fell off of Pokemon on 3DS, so I can't speak to the overall quality of those games. Maybe those were still great, but I think of the DS as the last great generation of Pokemon games. But then we move on to... And I'm just sticking with Nintendo right now. 3DS was really just the DS again, but 3D. I didn't mind the kind of weird hamburgery, sandwichy look of the original 3DS design, but they cleaned it up with the later ones. The XL was fine, but I really liked the new 3DS, the regular size one where you had the interchangeable faceplates and backplates. Love that. I have the Pokemon Red and Blue one, and I have the Pokemon Blue cover art on the front plate, and then the red on the back plate. Love that. So that's good, but it really is just the DS all over again. Then we get to the Switch, and the Switch is fine. It's fine. Looks nice, but I think part of it with me and the Switch is just the fact that I don't handheld game as much anymore. But also, when we get to these more modern things, post 3DS, so Steam Deck, Switch, ROG Ally, so on and so forth, we lose the portability, and I think that ends up hurting the products a lot. Go into the Sony side of things, we have the PSP and the Vita. I love both. I think I have to give the nod to the PSP for being the first and having a much better library. It was much more supported and had a lot of great experiences, great games on it. But it did, because I had the God of War Red one, which was a PSP, was that a 3000? Or was it a 2000? And I don't know what differentiates them, but the PSP does feel light. It does feel kind of cheap. And the UMDs are just the stupidest fucking things in the world. The push for having portable movies as well, dumb. Very, very dumb. But it had that library, which is what really holds the Vita back. Because the Vita is, from just a hardware standpoint, probably a top 3 handheld for me. I had the white OLED model, and it is just gorgeous. It feels so good. It feels dense and quality, and playing games on it feels really good. It just doesn't have that many games worth playing on it, sadly. So, yeah. That's it. I don't know. This is kind of a ending this whole question with, but I'm just curious what other people think or would say is their best handheld of all time. Do you agree that it's the DS Lite, or is it something else? Is it something I didn't even mention? Are you a big fan of the N-Gage? Do we consider the Virtual Boy a handheld? Or is it a headheld? What is the Virtual Boy? But I think in terms of my top 3, excluding the Nomad, because that's pure nostalgia, I can't put that in the top 3 for practical purposes. It would be the DS Lite, then probably the Game Boy Advance SP, and then the Vita. What about you? Huh? What about you? And I never had a Game Gear, so that's why I didn't really talk about that. But enough of all that. I also played some games this week, including City Bus Manager. This is exactly what it sounds like, a City Bus Manager. And I had the wrong intention. I think because I had press releases from both of these games at the same time, I had in my head that this was basically going to be like the game I talked about last episode, Subway Sim 2, where instead of me controlling a train, I would be controlling a bus. But that isn't what it is. It is very much so a management game, a sim game where you are creating your own city bus management station, building it out, hiring employees, building the structure, creating a lounge space, office space, so on and so forth. Creating a parking lot where you have spaces for your various buses, purchasing and managing different types of buses and creating routes for them that they go on and do their work. But what makes it really interesting is that it uses real map data from I don't know what. I'm assuming not Google, maybe Google Maps, I don't know. But it's using real map data to create your play area. So at the start of a scenario, you will tell it where you want to be located. You give it a country. I think you give it a continent first, or a region, then a country, then depending on what you're doing, you can give it a state and then a zip code. I don't remember the exact order of information, but eventually you can get it so that it's going to give you a very specific map of the location you selected using real map data so that you will get relatively accurate representation of the city that you've chosen. And I, of course, went with where I live, and I was surprised when that happened. I was like, oh shit, they actually have the Rosemont outlet center with all these stores here. It has this McDonald's I know of, and this and so on and so on. I don't live in Rosemont. I just know that area, and that's kind of where it loaded me when I gave it the zip code of Chicago. And so I then was able to set up where I want my bus depot, and after I got through tutorials and learning the ropes, set up my bus route and was able to watch it go. What I wish the game had, I don't think it has, is the ability to actually, I don't have to drive the bus, but just to be kind of a passenger or a fly on the wall to see it on its route. And maybe that's there and I wasn't told about it or so on. But I dig it. It is clunky on consoles. I'm playing it on Xbox, and it has the inherent clunkiness of doing all this stuff with a gamepad over a mouse and keyboard, as one would be expected. But once you get a handle for things, it's not that bad. The most tedious part about it is getting to the menus you want. So you will have to press a button and then navigate to the menu you want and then do that again, and getting to the stuff you want, whether it is a tool for building a new area for your depot or hiring this person or doing that person. It is a bit tedious getting there, but once you get there or get the tool and want to use it in the actual game, in the world, in the space, that is pretty streamlined, feels pretty good. So it's not the worst. Would it be better if you play this on PC with a mouse and keyboard? Absolutely. All of these games, simulation games and strategy games, I think almost universally will always be better with a mouse and keyboard over a gamepad. But in the case of City Bus Manager, it feels good. If this is your only way of playing the game, you're not going to get frustrated with the controls, which is nice. But I have only dabbled with it. I want to play more once the real map data became clear. I think that's just a very cool novelty that may already be in other games of this nature, but I've never played a game that has utilized real map data to do this. Outside of, Flight Simulator, which uses real world map information and whatnot and all that. But yeah, it's pretty cool. So if you like management games and you like the idea of being able to manage a bus depot in your specific hometown or places you visited, or you want to set it up in any part of the world, you want to set up a bus depot in Rome, Italy, or Tokyo, Japan, or whatever, you can do that. Then I played Mad Experiments Escape Room and Mad Experiments 2 Escape Room, which I believe recently came out on console. And these are weird. The first game got a 4K update, I think. So it has a series version on Xbox. And the second one doesn't. The first game is very much so a PC port. It feels so much like a game that was just ported from PC, just taken from PC and thrown on console without much thought. And then the second game looks uglier, doesn't have a series version, and but it has controls made for console and gamepad. Because in the first game, you're using an on-screen cursor. But in the second game, you're able to navigate the menus with the analog stick or D-pad. And that's weird to me. But in playing both of them, in their current state, they're just pretty ugly. They're buggy with things popping out about. The hint system isn't really much of a hint system. It's just a wall of text that gives you some clues for multiple of the puzzles. I could not. It was just not there. It feels they both feel in their own specific ways unfinished and kind of pushed to release. And that's unfortunate. They can be played together, which is kind of what you would want to do in these escape room type scenarios that are trying to mimic real life escape rooms where you're locked into space for an hour. These are an hour. There's also a relax mode, so you can play through these areas without any kind of time limit. But I've heard that the multiplayer is broken. I haven't tried it myself, so I can't speak to that. But yeah, just kind of a buggy, funky mess right now. Then I played Beef Cat Ultra, which is a survivor-like auto shooter that has a kind of cool setup where you are, instead of just playing in these survive as long as you can scenarios where you go into a map and then you're trying to last usually for 20 minutes and then a big boss will come through, and if you beat the boss you succeed and you can unlock the next area that'll give you some tougher enemies and so on. But instead of that, you have like this overworld map. Think of it like a classic Mario game, and you're moving from area to area. You'll have to get a certain number of stars or level wins to unlock this part of the map and so on. But instead of every level being survive as long as you can or survive through the time limit, you have survive maps. You have ones that want you to go through the entire level. So I think they're called gauntlet ones. So you'll keep getting to locked doors, having to find a key and getting through the level that way. Ones where you have to collect all of a certain type of piece in a level, and then ones where you have to kill a certain number of a specific type of enemy. And there might be more that I haven't experienced either. So I like that about the game. What I don't like, though, is the way it plays. It just doesn't, it's not a satisfying survivor-like. The character you're playing as, you can unlock other ones. I unlocked a frog so far that can just lay eggs that if enemies run into them, they die. And I was like, this doesn't seem that useful really as a main weapon. But your starter character is a cat who spins, I'm assuming it's by their tail, a mouse around every second or two and does damage to enemies it hits. And as you gain XP, level up things, you can level up your max health, the number of mouse hits you can do. So at first, I think you can only do one hit. So when you hit one enemy, it resets and goes on a cooldown timer. But the more you upgrade that, the more enemies you can hit with one swing. But it wasn't the most satisfying survivor-like in terms of its gameplay. And it didn't have any kind of dopamine hits in terms of good music or good art or anything else to draw you in with the lack of great gameplay. And I think part of what makes the gameplay feel as poor as it is that the levels are they're tighter and more structured, and they feel more specific in where they're at and what I think they might be also bespoke, no randomization in terms of any of the power-ups you can find in them, so that you are getting the same weapons if you do the same level over and over and over again. So there's no variation there, and the weapons and power-ups I've found so far are all pretty dull and boring. Whereas that one game I played a while ago now, Entropy Survivor or something like that, had those cosmic buses and other power-ups that were really cool and were visually interesting and exciting and super useful. And I liked the whole system of using your power-up or your currency that you gain through playing it to make certain power-ups show up more often and others less often. You get none of that here. So yeah, kind of a cool setup for the or structure for the game, but the actual playing of it isn't good, so it doesn't really matter. And then the last game I played is Damn, DAMN, all caps, exclamation mark. This is a top-down, very, very ugly shooter that looks like a super early Xbox Live Arcade game where, at least in the first handful of levels I played, in one of them you're going around saving hostages, killing enemies while you're doing it. Another one, you are planting a bomb in a space, and then you maybe had to kill all the enemies in this other one, get to this escape route in this other level. It just doesn't feel good. It's a twin stick shooter. Kind of, just in terms of the way levels are structured, has a bit of a Hotline Miami vibe to it, but don't actually really think about that or compare it because it looks ugly or way uglier, doesn't have good music. It looks bad, plays bad, sounds bad. It's just, damn, it wasn't a good time. So I did not last long playing that. I could tell pretty quickly that I was not going to have a good time with it, and I played maybe 15-20 minutes of it and knew that there wasn't going to be any kind of great revelation, great change that was going to make it a better experience. But that's it in terms of what I've been playing, and that is going to do it for this here episode of the Pixelated Sausage Show. Once again, I am Mark Krishnez. Y'all can find me pretty much everywhere at PX Sausage. If you enjoy this here show or any of the stuff I do and what have you, you can support me and my nonsense over at Patreon. That is patreon.com/PXS. There you can get access to a monthly Q&A, a private Discord channel, along with some fancy Discord roles, and the random drop on the Patreon here or there, depending on your tier. Or you could just support me to support me if that is your fancy. That is, again, patreon.com/PXS. In addition to the Patreon, you can find links to the site, the YouTube, the Discord, and so much more over at pxsausage.com. That is the letter P, the letter X, sausage.com. That is it. That is all. As always, thank you for watching or listening. I hope you enjoyed this here episode, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. But for now, adios, arrivederci. Bye bye.
It's go time.